The morning started like any other. Coffee brewing, the faint smell of burnt toast, meaning Sarah was probably trying to make breakfast again. But then, I looked out the window. My car. My beautiful, meticulously restored 1970 Challenger, the one I practically slept in during the restoration, was gone. Not stolen, just gone. The driveway was empty. My heart started to pound. My phone buzzed. It was Sarah, my wife. Her text popped up on the lock screen. "Hey babe, just sold your old junker. Needed the cash for a surprise vacation. Be back next week. Love you, old junker." That car was worth more than her entire wardrobe. Probably more than half the furniture in our house. It was my passion, my therapy, the one thing from my youth I'd poured my soul into keeping perfect. A surprise vacation? Without me? My stomach dropped into my shoes. This wasn't right. This wasn't Sarah. Not the Sarah I thought I knew. And then, before I could even process the first text, another one flashed across my screen. It wasn't from Sarah. It was a picture. A selfie. Sarah, smiling. Her head leaned against a man I'd never seen before. A man with a smug grin and a tan that screamed, "Recently off a beach." Text beneath the picture read, "On the way to the airport, darling. Can't wait for Mexico with you. Love you more than anything." It was from an unknown number. My vision blurred. Mexico, a surprise vacation. With him. My car gone. Sold. For them, the air felt thick, impossible to breathe. The burnt toast smell suddenly felt like it was choking me. My hands started to shake uncontrollably. This wasn't just a simple mistake. This was a betrayal, on a scale I couldn't even comprehend. It was like a movie, a really bad one, and I was the clueless idiot in it. I stood there, frozen, staring at that picture. Sarah's eyes, usually so warm when she looked at me, were sparkling with a light I hadn't seen in years. A light for him, this stranger, the one who was taking her to Mexico with money from my car. My car. The one I worked 3 jobs to buy when I was 19. The one I spent every spare penny and hour on. It wasn't just a car, it was a part of me, a piece of my history, and she called it an old junker. She sold it. Without asking. For him. The first wave of shock gave way to a cold, burning rage. It wasn't a hot, screaming rage. It was a silent, deep, bone-chilling anger that settled deep in my gut. My mind started racing, trying to put pieces together. The late nights she'd been having, the sudden girls' nights out that extended past midnight, the way she'd been glued to her phone, always texting with a secret smile. I'd brushed it off as stress, as her needing space. I was such an idiot. A blind, trusting fool. I scrolled through the messages again. The one from Sarah. The one from Darling. It was all there, laid out plain as day. My car was gone, sacrificed for their sordid little trip. I pictured them on a beach, laughing, sipping drinks, while I stood here in our happy home staring at an empty driveway. The house felt like a tomb now. Every object, every piece of furniture, every picture frame seemed to mock me. This was our house, the house she loved. The house she spent months decorating, painting, picking out every single curtain and cushion. She called it her dream home. She'd always said she'd never want to live anywhere else. Funny how quickly dreams can turn into nightmares. My hands clenched into fists. I wanted to scream. I wanted to smash something. But a strange calm washed over me, a terrifying kind of clarity. My vision, so blurred moments ago, was now crystal clear. I knew what I had to do. Not right now, not in a fit of rage. I needed to be smart. I needed to be deliberate. She took my most prized possession, the symbol of my independence and my past. She did it without a second thought. She called it old junker. Well, this old junker was about to teach her a very painful lesson about value, about love, and about what happens when you treat someone's heart like a used car. The car was gone, but the house, her house, the one she loved more than anything, was still here, for now. I walked to the window again, looking at the empty space where my Challenger should have been. A faint tire mark was still visible on the asphalt. It was a fresh wound, a gaping hole where something vital used to be. The sun was rising, casting long, accusing shadows across the driveway. It was going to be a long week, a very long week, but I wouldn't waste it, not 1 second. I would use every minute of it to prepare, to plan, to make sure that when Sarah came back from her surprise vacation, she would be in for a surprise of her own, a much bigger one. My mind was already racing, running through possibilities, legalities. The house, it was technically mine, purchased before we got married. Though she'd poured her heart and soul into making it ours, I'd never bothered to put her name on the deed. Always meant to, never got around to it. A small oversight that now felt like the universe had been subtly guiding me, preparing me for this moment. This wasn't about anger anymore. This was about justice, my brand of justice. And it was going to be sweet. The first thing I did was make another pot of coffee, strong and black. My hands still trembled slightly, but the clear-headed rage had solidified into something cold and analytical. Sarah's texts were still on my phone, the picture too. Evidence. I took screenshots, then emailed them to myself. Call me paranoid, but I needed a digital paper trail. Next, I went to my office, a small spare room in the house that had become my sanctuary. I pulled out old files looking for the car's title. It was in my name, clear as day. No co-owner, no lien, just me. This was important. It meant Sarah had sold it illegally, without my consent, or at least without proper legal transfer. This was grand larceny, technically. My mind briefly entertained the idea of reporting it stolen, but that felt too messy, too much like a police drama. This wasn't about cops. This was about a deeper kind of justice. I checked our joint bank account. Sure enough, a large deposit had landed just hours before, the sale price of the Challenger. It was less than what the car was worth, a lot less, but still a significant chunk of change. Enough for a luxury trip to Mexico, no doubt. She hadn't just sold it. She'd probably rushed the sale, eager to get the cash quickly and quietly. The buyer likely got a steal, another stab of pain. My beautiful car, undervalued, probably sitting in some stranger's garage, waiting to be flipped for a quick profit. I needed more proof of the affair. Her phone was gone, obviously, but Sarah wasn't always the most discreet person. I remembered her, often leaving her iPad on the kitchen counter, logged into various accounts. I found it, picked it up, my heart pounding a rhythm against my ribs. Her email was open. I scrolled through, nothing obvious, but then I saw her travel agent's email, an itinerary to Cancun, Mexico. Dates matched her text, and listed not just Sarah Miller, but Sarah Miller and Mark Johnson. Mark Johnson. Mark Johnson. The name clicked. I vaguely remembered her mentioning a new colleague at work, a project they were on together. Mark. Tall, charming, a bit too smooth for my liking. I dismissed it then. Now my stomach churned. He was the guy in the selfie. My fingers flew across the keyboard. Facebook, LinkedIn. I found Mark Johnson. His profile picture was the same smug face from the selfie. His job? Same company as Sarah? His relationship status? It's complicated. Of course it was. His recent posts included blurry photos of beaches, drinks, and one very clear shot of a fancy resort pool. All from Cancun. My blood ran cold, but my resolve hardened. I went through her iPad's photos. She had a separate album hidden in plain sight, labeled Work Project. Inside were dozens of selfies with Mark. Pictures of them at dinner, holding hands across tables, him kissing her cheek, her smiling eyes sparkling. Photos that showed a progression from innocent colleagues to something undeniably intimate. The final photo in the album was the one she'd sent to him, the one that flashed on my lock screen. Their little goodbye selfie. It was all there. Years of my life, our shared history crumbling before my eyes, replaced by images of her infidelity. The betrayal was so deep, so absolute. She hadn't just cheated. She'd used my property, my precious car, to fund her betrayal. She had reduced my love, my trust, to a monetary transaction, a means to an end for her and her lover. This wasn't just about a car or an affair anymore. This was about a fundamental disrespect, a complete disregard for me as a person, as a husband. I spent the rest of the day in a blur of data collection. I printed out the flight itinerary, the bank statements, the emails, the photos. I organized them into a neat folder. This wasn't for a lawyer, not yet. This was for me. To remind me, to fuel me, to ensure I didn't waver. Then I shifted gears. The house, our house, the one Sarah had meticulously decorated, turning it into a dream home. Every room was a testament to her taste, her vision. She'd spent countless hours picking out paint colors, furniture, even the smallest knickknacks. She'd always said she could never imagine living anywhere else. But the house was legally mine. I had bought it years before I met Sarah, with an inheritance from my grandmother. It had always been in my name. I had never added Sarah to the deed, despite her hints, despite my vague promises. I'd been stupidly sentimental, telling her it was ours in spirit. That paper didn't matter. Turns out paper mattered a lot. I pulled out the deed, the mortgage papers, all in my name. Quick call to a real estate lawyer, a friend of a friend I trusted, confirmed it. "You are the sole owner, man," he said, his voice flat. "You can sell it whenever you want. You just have to serve her notice of the sale and deal with any marital property claims during a divorce. But you don't need her permission to list it or sell it." A cold, calculated smile touched my lips. The path was clear. She sold my car, the one thing that truly belonged to me, to fund her betrayal. I would sell the house, the one thing that truly belonged to her, the symbol of her life with me, the place she poured her soul into. It was the only way to balance the scales, to make her feel the same gut-wrenching loss, the same shocking betrayal. The week ahead was going to be busy. Sarah was in for a very rude awakening. The week crawled by, each day a slow torture. Sarah sent me a few more texts from Mexico, having a blast. "Wish you were here," and "Miss you, babe." Each one a fresh knife twist. I replied with bland, non-committal texts. "Glad you are enjoying yourself," or "Sounds good." I had to play the part, act like the clueless husband, just for a little while longer. I spent those days in a feverish blur of activity. My first stop was a trusted real estate agent. I chose one from a different town, one who didn't know Sarah or our local connections. I needed discretion. I explained my unusual circumstances, leaving out the gory details of the affair, just saying I needed to sell quickly and quietly. He was surprised by my urgency, but professional. "The market's hot," he said, reviewing the photos I'd sent him of the interior. A house like this in this neighborhood, it'll go fast. We can list it quietly off-market if you want, but you'll get more visibility with a full MLS listing. Full MLS, I said, my voice flat. I want it seen. I want it gone. As quickly as possible. He nodded, sensing the unspoken urgency. We discussed pricing. I priced it competitively just below market value to ensure a quick sale. I wanted it sold, not sitting on the market for months. The goal was speed and impact, not maximum profit. Though the profit would be a nice bonus. Getting the house ready for showing was a challenge. Sarah had left her touch everywhere. Her clothes were still in the closet, her toiletries in the bathroom, her books on the nightstand. I had to make it look presentable for buyers while also ensuring she wouldn't notice anything was amiss if she happened to FaceTime or something. I started packing away some of her more personal items, telling myself it was decluttering for a spring clean. I put them in boxes in the garage, out of sight. The real estate agent arranged for professional photos. I scheduled them for a day. Sarah had told me she'd be on an excursion, far away from any Wi-Fi. I made sure to be home guiding the photographer, making sure every angle showcased the house's best features. The irony was bitter. I was essentially marketing the very thing that represented her betrayal. The next challenge was showings. People wanted to see the house. I had to come up with elaborate excuses for why I was out of the house for hours at a time. Going to the gym, meeting an old friend, running errands. Sarah wasn't big on checking up on me, thankfully. Her focus was clearly elsewhere. I had a few potential buyers through and the feedback was excellent. Everyone loved the house, loved the way it was decorated. "Your wife has great taste," one potential buyer commented, and I just forced a smile, my stomach twisting. Yes, she did. She also had terrible morals. Midweek, Sarah called, video chatting from a sunny beach. "Look," she chirped, turning the camera to show me the turquoise water. "Isn't it beautiful? Wish you were here, honey." The lie was so thick, I could almost taste it. I just nodded, grunted some appreciative noises and quickly ended the call, claiming bad reception. I couldn't bear to look at her feigned innocence, knowing who was likely just out of frame, sipping a margarita. By the end of the week, I had 2 solid offers. One was slightly lower, but the buyer was pre-approved and wanted a quick closing. The other was higher, but had more contingencies. I went with a quicker closing. I wanted this done. I wanted the deal sealed before she even stepped foot back on American soil. The offer was accepted, and the paperwork began. Inspection, appraisal, loan approval. It was all moving at an incredible pace. The realtor was impressed. "You are lucky," he said. "This is one of the fastest sales I've ever seen, lucky." That wasn't the word I'd use. Desperate, maybe. Or vengeful. On the day of Sarah's return, I cleaned the house meticulously. Not for her, but for myself. I wanted it perfect for her grand return. I even bought her flowers, a small, twisted gesture of what was to come. I cooked her favorite meal, roasted chicken and mashed potatoes. I was playing the part to perfection. The doorbell rang. My heart hammered against my ribs. This was it. Game time. I opened the door. Sarah stood there, tanned, looking rested, and radiating a peculiar glow that I now knew was not from love for me. She was carrying a small carry-on bag and a duty-free shopping bag. She beamed, a wide, innocent smile. "Honey, I am back," she exclaimed, throwing her arms around me. She smelled of sunscreen and something vaguely tropical, not the familiar scent of our home. I hugged her back woodenly. Her cheerful energy was almost sickening. "Welcome home, Sarah," I said, my voice calm, flat. Too calm she didn't notice. She pulled back, her eyes bright. Oh, it was amazing. You have no idea. So relaxing. I feel like a new woman. She spun around, taking in the house. Something smells good. You cooked? Yes, I said. I thought you might be hungry after your long journey. We sat down to eat. She chattered incessantly about the trip, about the resort, the food, the sights. She told me about the lovely people she met, about how she made a new friend who showed her around. My stomach churned, but I forced myself to listen, to nod, to ask a few questions, playing along. I kept my face carefully neutral. I wanted to see how long she would keep up the charade. How much she would lie to my face. She never mentioned Mark. Not once. Not a single slip. Just a friend. The audacity of it was almost impressive. After dinner, she went to take a shower. I sat at the kitchen table, the folder of evidence on the counter, staring at it. My anger was no longer boiling. It was a cold, steady flame. She was refreshed, invigorated by her illicit vacation, and she had no idea what was coming. The house was sold. The closing date was set for next week. And tomorrow the final paperwork for the sale was arriving. It was time for her surprise. Sarah emerged from the shower, wrapped in a fluffy towel, her hair damp. She looked relaxed, even happy. My stomach clenched. How could she be so casual, so seemingly content after what she'd done? It was infuriating. She hummed a little tune, something tropical. "I am going to unpack, and then we can watch a movie, okay?" she said, heading for our bedroom. "Actually, Sarah," I said, my voice cutting through her cheerful tone. She paused, halfway into the bedroom, turning to look at me. Her brow furrowed slightly. My calm, steady voice must have registered as unusual. "I think we need to talk," I continued, gesturing to the kitchen table. Her face fell a little. "Oh, talk. Now. Can't it wait? I am exhausted." "No," I said, my voice firm. "It can't." She sighed, a put-upon sigh, and slowly walked back, taking a seat opposite me at the table. Her eyes met mine, and for the first time, I saw a flicker of something, a tiny spark of unease. "What's wrong?" she asked, trying to sound annoyed, but there was a tremor in her voice. I pushed the folder across the table towards her. It was a thick manila folder, bulging with printouts. Her eyes widened slightly as she looked at it, then back at me. "What's this?" she asked, her voice quiet now. "Proof," I said. My voice was a low growl, controlled but laced with an icy fury. "Proof of your surprise vacation." She picked up the folder, her hands shaking slightly. She opened it, slowly at first, then faster as her eyes darted over the first few pages. Her face went pale as she saw the bank statement showing the deposit from the car sale, then the car title, then the flight itinerary, then the emails, and finally the photos. Dozens of them. Her and Mark. Smiling, laughing, kissing the Cancun album. Her face crumpled. The tan seemed to drain from her skin. "I can explain," she whispered, her voice barely audible. "Can you?" I asked, leaning forward, my gaze piercing. "Can you explain why you sold my car, my Challenger? The car I spent years restoring, the one I poured my life into. The one you called an old junker and then pawned off for cash." My voice rose slightly, the controls starting to fray. "To fund a trip with your lover to Mexico." Tears welled up in her eyes. "It wasn't like that," she sobbed, finally looking up at me, her eyes pleading. "It was just a mistake. I needed money, and I knew you wouldn't let me take it from savings, and that car was just sitting there taking up space." "Taking up space," I interrupted. my voice sharp. It was my pride and joy, Sarah. It was a part of me, and you just liquidated it like it was trash. For him. I slammed my hand on the table, making her jump. You used my property to pay for your affair. That's not a mistake, Sarah. That's a calculated, cold-hearted betrayal. She burst into full-blown tears, covering her face with her hand. I am sorry. Oh God, I am so sorry. I don't know what came over me. Mark, he was there, and I was feeling so neglected. I scoffed. Neglected? We talked every night. I asked you what was wrong. You said nothing. You said you were happy. All while you were planning your little love nest with another man. I stood up, pacing the small kitchen. And the car, Sarah? The car? Did you think I wouldn't notice it was gone? Did you think I was that stupid? I don't know what I thought, she cried, looking up at me, tears streaming down her face. I was stupid. It was a moment of weakness. I love you. I swear I love you, not him. He means nothing. Oh, he means nothing, I asked, my voice dripping with sarcasm. 'Cause the pictures tell a different story, the texts tell a different story. The fact that you paid for his trip with my car tells a very different story. I stopped pacing and stood over her. You broke every single vow, every promise we ever made. You didn't just cheat on me, Sarah. You systematically dismantled my trust, my sense of security, my very identity, piece by piece. She kept crying, begging, pleading. Please, darling, don't leave me. We can fix this. I'll do anything. I'll get your car back. I'll never see him again. You can't get my car back, Sarah, I said, my voice flat. Gone. You sold it. And even if you could, it wouldn't matter. It's not just about the car. It's about the complete disregard you showed for me, for us, for everything. I walked over to the counter, where an envelope sat. It had been delivered this morning by a courier, along with the flowers and the roast chicken ingredients. It was the preliminary closing statement for the house sale. I picked it up along with a pen. But you are right about one thing, Sarah, I said, turning back to her, holding up the envelope. Her eyes, red and swollen, focused on it, confused. We can fix this, or rather, I can. And I will. Her crying quieted into sniffles. What do you mean? She whispered, her eyes wide with apprehension. I looked at her, truly looked at her, for the first time since she'd come home. All the love I'd felt for her was gone, replaced by a vast, echoing emptiness, filled only with a cold, clear determination. You said this was your dream home, didn't you? I asked, my voice calm again, chillingly so. You said you loved it more than anything, that you could never imagine living anywhere else. She nodded slowly, nervously. Yes, but... Well, I interrupted, a grim smile spreading across my face. I sold it. The words hung in the air, heavy and final. Sarah's eyes widened, her jaw dropped. She stopped breathing. The only sound in the room was the ticking of the clock. What? She finally managed to gasp, her voice a strangled whisper. You sold it? What do you mean? Just what I said, I replied, holding up the closing statement. Papers arrive today. We close next week. New owners move in the week after. Her face went from pale to ashen. Her eyes darted around the kitchen, around her kitchen. The one she designed, the one she'd cooked in, the one she'd loved. The reality of my words seemed to hit her with the force of a physical blow. No, she breathed, shaking her head, tears starting to flow again. But these were different tears. These were tears of pure shock, of dawning horror. You can't do that. This is our home. My home. It was my car, I said, my voice devoid of emotion. And it was my house. Just like the car was solely in my name, so is this house. Always has been. You remember, before we got married, I bought it, my inheritance. You just decorated it. I pushed the closing statement across the table to her. Consider it even, Sarah. A fair exchange. My prized possession for yours. She stared at the papers, then up at me. Her eyes filled with a mixture of disbelief and utter devastation. The surprise vacation was over. Her real nightmare had just begun. The silence that followed my revelation was deafening, broken only by Sarah's ragged breathing. She stared at the closing statement, then back at me, her face a mask of utter horror. "You can't be serious," she whispered, her voice trembling. "You are joking, right? This is some kind of sick joke." "Do I look like I am joking, Sarah?" I asked, my face grim. "Do I look like I am playing games?" She snatched the papers, her eyes scanning the details. The address, the price, the closing date. All real. Her name wasn't on it. Mine was. The reality of it slammed into her. The tears that had stopped for a moment now flowed freely again. But these were tears of pure despair, not regret. "How could you?" she wailed, clutching the papers to her chest. "How could you do this? This is our home. My home. You know how much I love this house. You know how much I loved my car," I retorted, my voice flat, emotionless. "You didn't seem to care about that when you were selling it to fund your little romantic getaway. This house means to you what my car meant to me. Now you know how it feels." "This is different," she sobbed, standing up, pacing around the kitchen wildly. "This is where we live. Where are we going to go? What about all our things? My things? That's your problem, isn't it?" I said, leaning back in my chair, watching her unravel. "Just like where my car went was my problem. But you can't just sell a house without telling your wife," she cried, her voice cracking. "Actually, Sarah," I said, a faint bitter smile playing on my lips, "I can. I owned this house long before I ever met you. My name is the only one on the deed. Always has been. I remember you asking me to put your name on it, and I said we'd get around to it, but we never did. Lucky for me, huh?" Her eyes widened in horror. You always knew you could do this, didn't you? You planned this." "No," I said, shaking my head. "I didn't plan this." "You planned this. You decided to betray me. You decided to steal from me. You decided to throw away our marriage for a cheap thrill with a cheap man. I am just reacting to your choices, Sarah. You set the rules of this game." She started pleading again, begging me to reconsider. "Please, darling, don't do this. I'll get a loan. I'll buy the car back. I'll make it up to you. Anything. Just don't sell the house." "Too late," I said simply. "Papers are signed. The buyer has been approved. The closing is next week. It's done." She collapsed into a chair, burying her face in her hands, sobbing uncontrollably. The sounds were raw, guttural. It was the sound of a dream dying, of a foundation crumbling. And part of me, a small dark part, felt a grim satisfaction. This was the justice I craved. "What about our life here?" she choked out through her tears. "Our memories, our future." "Our memories just became tainted, Sarah," I said, my voice cold. "And our future just became a legal separation, followed by a divorce. No future in this house for either of us, not anymore." I stood up. "You have until the closing date to pack your things. Anything you want, you take. Anything left behind will be donated or discarded. I'll make sure your personal belongings are accessible. But after that, you are on your own." I've already moved my essentials into storage. I am leaving tomorrow to stay with a friend until the sale is finalized, and I figure out my next steps. Her head snapped up, her eyes wide with panic. You are leaving. Where are you going? That's none of your concern, I said. Just know that when I come back, it'll be to finish the closing, not to be your husband. She lunged at me, grabbing my arm. Please, don't do this. I love you. This is my home. You are destroying everything. I gently but firmly removed her hand from my arm. You destroyed everything, Sarah. Not me. I am just cleaning up the mess you made, starting with this house. I walked over to the living room, a room she had spent weeks decorating, finding just the right antique rug, the perfect throw pillows. It was her masterpiece. I looked at it, then turned back to her. I need you to understand something, I said, my voice quiet but firm. My car was more than metal and wheels. It was a piece of my soul, a constant in my life. You treated it like garbage. This house is your piece of soul, your constant. Now you get to experience what it feels like to have that ripped away from you. To have the very ground you stand on yanked out from under your feet. She looked around the room, her eyes wide with terror, then back at me, tears streaming down her face. There was a desperate pleading look in her eyes that finally started to get to me. Just a little. But then I remembered the photo of her and Mark, laughing hand in hand, knowing my car paid for it, and the fleeting moment of sympathy vanished. The realtor will contact you about scheduling the final walkthrough with the buyers, I said, my voice steady. I've told him you'll cooperate. She just stared at me, speechless, broken. Her perfect little world had shattered around her. It was a brutal thing to witness, and for a split second I felt a pang of something akin to regret. But then the image of my empty driveway flashed in my mind again, followed by the image of her smug lover, and the pang was replaced by a cold, hard resolve. I walked into the bedroom, pulled my packed bags from the closet, and grabbed my jacket. I had already booked a temporary stay at an Airbnb across town. I needed space. I needed to breathe, and she needed to face the consequences of her actions, alone. As I opened the front door, I paused, looking back at her. She was still standing in the kitchen, surrounded by the remnants of her perfect dream home, tears silently streaming down her face. Her world was ending, and for the first time she truly understood why. Goodbye, Sarah, I said, my voice devoid of warmth. Enjoy your house while you still can. And then I walked out, closing the door behind me, leaving her alone in the wreckage of her own making. The air outside felt crisp and clean, a stark contrast to the suffocating atmosphere inside. I was free. And for the first time in a long time, I felt like I could breathe. The next few days were strange. I stayed at an Airbnb I'd booked, a quiet little place a few towns over. It was small, but it felt like a sanctuary. I didn't reach out to Sarah, and she didn't reach out to me, save for one desperate, incoherent voicemail she left late one night, begging me to come back, promising anything. I didn't return the call. I kept in touch with the realtor. He called to confirm the final inspection was done and passed, and that the buyers were excited. He also mentioned that Sarah had been difficult during the few times she had to interact with the inspection team or other professionals. She apparently tried to deny the sale was happening, then claimed it was a misunderstanding. She even tried to stop an appraiser from entering the house, claiming it was an invasion of privacy. But because my name was the only one on the deed, she had no legal standing. My lawyer friend had already prepped the realtor on how to handle her. It was a sad display, but it was also a testament to her denial. She was slowly realizing the finality of it all. This wasn't a threat. This wasn't a game. This was happening. I used the time away from the house to start putting my own life back together. I opened a new bank account, just for myself, and transferred all the money from the joint account into it, less a reasonable sum for her immediate living expenses, which I transferred to her personal account. It was a small act of mercy, or maybe just practical. She'd need it. I also started consulting with a divorce lawyer, getting my ducks in a row for the inevitable. The lawyer assured me that while the house sale was legally sound, a divorce would still involve complex negotiations regarding marital assets and spousal support. But I felt strong, prepared. My mind was clear. The day of the closing arrived like a distant thunderclap. It was set for early afternoon. I drove to the lawyer's office, a sense of grim determination settling over me. I wasn't nervous, just resolute. This was the end of one chapter, the beginning of another. Sarah showed up, looking drawn and pale, her eyes red-rimmed. She was dressed in sweatpants and an old t-shirt, a far cry from the polished, put-together woman I'd married. She avoided eye contact with me, keeping her gaze fixed on the table, on the piles of documents. Her lawyer was there too, looking uncomfortable. My lawyer gave me a brief, reassuring nod. The closing process felt surreal. Papers were signed, names were scribbled, hands were shaken. The buyers, a young couple, were beaming. They talked excitedly about their plans for the house, about starting their family there. Sarah flinched with every word, every joyful exclamation about her dream home. She kept glancing at me, a desperate, pleading look in her eyes, as if begging me to call it off, to say it was all a joke. But I remained impassive. I watched her face as the reality of losing her sanctuary washed over her. It was a raw, unfiltered pain, and it was exactly what I had intended. She finally understood the cost of her betrayal, not just emotionally, but materially. When it was over, the lawyers gathered their papers. The buyers thanked us profusely, then shook my hand, then Sarah's. Her hand trembled in theirs. They left, probably, to go celebrate. Sarah's lawyer leaned in and spoke to her in a low voice. I heard snippets. Legally, T here is nothing. Your husband had every right, separate property. Sarah stood up, her shoulders slumped. She looked at me, her eyes filled with a mixture of hatred and despair. You got what you wanted, didn't you? She spat, her voice hoarse. I got what you earned, I replied, my voice steady. And what you chose. She scoffed, a bitter, broken sound, and then turned and walked out of the office, her lawyer trailing behind her. I didn't follow. I just sat there for a moment, letting the silence settle, letting the finality of the moment sink in. The house was gone. The car was gone. My marriage was gone. Everything was gone. But it felt clean. Like a surgical amputation, painful but necessary. Bestror but necessary. I walked out of the office feeling lighter than I had in weeks. The weight of her betrayal, of her lies, had been crushing me. Now that weight was lifted, replaced by a strange sense of liberation. The money from the house sale was now safely in my new bank account. It wasn't about the money, but it was a tangible representation of reclaiming control. I drove back to my Airbnb, not to the house. The house was no longer mine. It belonged to the young couple now, a place for their new beginnings. My beginnings were somewhere else. I spent the next few days packing up the few remaining things I had left at the house. Mostly tools, some sentimental items, old photo albums. I hired a moving company to deal with the heavy stuff. Sarah was already gone when I arrived, having apparently taken what she wanted and left. The house was stark empty, echoing with the silence of a life that no longer existed. Her scent, her presence, it was all gone. It felt like walking through a museum of a life that was once mine. I found a note on the kitchen counter, written in her familiar looping handwriting. "You ruined my life. I hope you are happy." I crumpled the note and tossed it in the trash. No, I wasn't happy. Not yet. But I was closer. And I wasn't the one who ruined our life. She was. And now she knew the price. I said goodbye to the empty rooms, the ghosts of memories, and locked the door for the last time. The key I'd hand over to the realtor. It was truly over. And as I drove away, I didn't look back. I looked forward to whatever came next. To a life where I was in control. A life free from deception. The road ahead was uncertain, but at least now I was driving it. And I was driving it alone. The days after the closing felt like navigating a strange, empty landscape. The initial high of executing my plan faded, replaced by a quiet, pervasive emptiness. The house was gone. The car was gone. And so was Sarah. My phone was blessedly silent. No more texts from her, no more desperate calls. She had vanished, likely with her lawyer, to figure out her next steps. I stayed at the Airbnb for another week, just decompressing. I spent my days walking, reading, trying to process everything. It wasn't about happiness yet. It was about survival, about healing. The immediate shock and rage had subsided, leaving behind a dull ache. Losing a marriage, even a broken one, still hurts. It's the death of a future you imagined, a life you built. I found myself replaying moments, both good and bad, trying to understand how we got here. Was I blind? Was she always capable of such calculated cruelty? Did I miss the signs? The answer, I realized, was probably a mix of everything. We both played a part in the decline of the marriage, but her actions, her specific betrayal with the car and the lover, were unforgivable. I started thinking about my next move. The Airbnb was temporary. I needed a new home, a new base. I didn't want to live in a place that held any memories of Sarah. So I started looking for a small apartment in a completely different part of the city, somewhere I could truly start fresh. No more shared spaces, no more ghosts. The divorce proceedings began quietly. My lawyer filed the papers. Sarah's lawyer responded. It was all by the book, cold and legal. There were discussions about assets, about what she was entitled to, about spousal support. I was prepared for it. The house money gave me leverage, and the evidence of her infidelity, while not always directly affecting asset division, certainly helped my case for a less generous settlement. My lawyer, seeing my resolve and the clear evidence, was confident. One afternoon, a letter arrived at the Airbnb, forwarded from my old address. It was from Sarah, not a legal document, but a handwritten letter. I almost threw it away, but curiosity got the better of me. I opened it. Her handwriting was shaky. It was a mix of apology, regret, and still a hint of accusation. She admitted her mistakes, finally acknowledging the affair and the car sale were wrong. She talked about her pain, about losing her dream home. She said she had nowhere to go, that Mark had turned out to be not who I thought he was once the money ran out and the fun stopped. Apparently her lover wasn't interested in a relationship once her life was in shambles. A predictable outcome, but one that gave me no satisfaction. Just further confirmed her poor judgment. The letter ended with a plea. Please give me another chance. Let's talk. Can't we go back to how things were? I am so alone. I miss you. I miss our home. I crumpled the letter just like I did with her first note. There was no going back. The bridges were burned, the foundations shattered. Pain she was feeling was a direct result of her own actions. I didn't feel joy in her suffering, but I felt no pity either. She made her bed. I found a small, modern apartment downtown. It was nothing like the spacious house, but it was mine, truly mine. No shared history, no lingering scent of betrayal, just clean lines and new possibilities. I started buying new furniture, simple, functional pieces. It felt good to build something from scratch again, something that was entirely for me. My focus shifted from revenge to rebuilding. I started going to the gym consistently, something I'd let slide. I reconnected with old friends I'd neglected during my marriage. I even started exploring new hobbies, things I never had time for before. Learning to play the guitar, taking a cooking class. It was slow, sometimes painful, but it was progress. One evening, I was looking through old photos on my phone, sorting through them, deciding what to keep, what to delete. I came across a picture of my Challenger, pristine, gleaming red under the sun, parked in the driveway of the house. A bittersweet pang went through me. I missed that car. But then I remembered how it was used, how it was sold, and the pang lessened. It was a sacrifice, yes, but one that brought me something invaluable. My freedom, and a clear understanding of who Sarah truly was. The divorce was finalized a few months later. It was amicable, as these things go, largely because I had a strong case and she had little leverage after the house sale. Court acknowledged the equitable division of assets, including the proceeds from the sale of the house, which were in my account, and the proceeds from the sale of the car, which had largely been spent. There was some spousal support, but it was less than it might have been, given the circumstances. I signed the final papers without hesitation. It was truly over. I never saw Sarah again after the closing. I heard, through mutual acquaintances, that she had moved out of state, to stay with a relative. She had lost everything she valued, her husband, her home, her pride, and her lover. A painful lesson indeed. I thought about the house sometimes, about the young couple moving in, making it their own. It was a good house, a beautiful house. It deserved a happy family, a fresh start. And so did I. My new apartment felt small, but it was a beginning, a fresh canvas. I had the financial security from the sale of the house, which meant I wasn't tied to a job I hate. I could take my time, figure out what I truly wanted to do next. The revenge had been a catalyst, a necessary act to break free. But the real work, the real victory, was in building a new life. A stronger, happier one, brick by brick, on my own terms. It was a long road, but I was finally on it. Months passed, turning into a year. My new apartment slowly began to feel like home. It had no grand garden, no custom-designed kitchen, but it had peace. It had quiet. And most importantly, it had only my memories, my things, my future. I filled it with books, a new guitar, and photos from my own adventures. Solo trips, hikes with friends, simple moments of joy. The initial raw emotion of the divorce and the house sale faded into a dull scar. It was still there, a reminder, but it no longer throbbed with every beat of my heart. I dated a little cautiously. It was strange at first, navigating the world of dating again after so many years of marriage. I was honest about my past, about the betrayal. Some people were put off, but the right ones understood. They saw the strength in how I handled it, not just the pain. I never saw Sarah, never heard from her. The mutual acquaintances we once shared slowly faded out of my life, or hers, as we both moved on to different circles. It was a clean break, which was exactly what I needed. My career took an unexpected turn. With the financial cushion from the house sale, I felt brave enough to leave my safe, but unfulfilling job. I pursued something I was truly passionate about, restoring classic cars. not as a hobby anymore, but as a business. Started small, in a rented garage, working on projects for clients. It was challenging, sometimes exhausting, but deeply satisfying. It felt like coming full circle. My Challenger was gone, but the act of working on other people's beloved vehicles felt like a form of therapy, a way to reclaim what was taken from me. Not through anger, but through creation. The irony wasn't lost on me. The very act of selling the car that led to all this ultimately propelled me into a career I loved. It was a strange, twisted path to purpose. I often thought about the concept of revenge. Had it been worth it? The answer wasn't simple. The act of selling the house, while brutal, had given me a sense of agency, a feeling of regaining control in a situation where I felt utterly powerless. It was a necessary step for me to move past the profound betrayal. It was the only way I could balance the scales in my own mind, to feel that justice had been served, even if it was a harsh personal form of justice. But true healing, I realized, wasn't about her pain. It was about my peace. And my peace came from within, from rebuilding my life on solid ground, from focusing on my own well-being, not from watching her suffer. One sunny afternoon, I was working on a vintage Mustang in my garage. The smell of oil and old leather filled the air, a comforting scent. I was engrossed in tuning the engine, covered in grease, completely absorbed in the work. My phone buzzed. It was a text from a number I didn't recognize. My heart gave a little jump of apprehension. Old habits die hard. Was it Sarah? After all this time? I wiped my hands on a rag and picked up the phone. It was a picture message. My stomach tightened. Then I saw the image. It was my Challenger. My beautiful cherry red 1970 Challenger. It was parked in a driveway, a different driveway, but it was unmistakably my car. It looked immaculate, even better than I remembered. And standing next to it, smiling, was a young man, probably in his early 20s. Text below the picture read, "Hey, I heard through the grapevine you used to own this beauty. Just wanted to say thanks, I love it. Took a lot of work, but she runs like a dream. Never selling her." My breath hitched. It was the young guy who had bought it, the one who'd gotten it for a steal. He must have recognized my name from the old registration, or perhaps the real estate agent had mentioned me, or maybe a mutual friend. Either way, he'd found me. A wave of emotion washed over me. Not anger, not sadness, but a strange, profound sense of peace. My car. It was still out there, being loved, being cherished. Not just a distant memory or a painful reminder, but a living, breathing machine bringing joy to someone else. It was a full circle. Sarah had taken it from me for a fleeting, selfish pleasure, but it had found a good home. And in a way, its loss had led me to find my own new home, my own new passion, my own new life. The revenge, the pain, the bitterness, it was all part of the journey. But the destination was peace. And looking at that picture of my Challenger, finally free from the shadow of betrayal, I realized I had truly arrived. I smiled. And for the first time in a very long time, it was a genuine smile. Picture of my Challenger stayed on my phone for a long time. Every now and then I'd open it, just to look. It wasn't a source of pain anymore, but a quiet validation. The car, my baby, was out there, living its best life. And so was I. Life settled into a new rhythm. My car restoration business grew slowly but steadily. I found a real sense of purpose in it. It wasn't just about fixing engines. It was about bringing old beauties back to life, about preserving history, about the satisfaction of working with my hands. Clients trusted me, respected my work, and that trust was something I valued deeply after the betrayal I'd experienced. I dated more confidently, no longer carrying the heavy baggage of my past. I learned to be open, to communicate honestly, to recognize red flags. I sought genuine connection, not just fleeting company. It was a process of rediscovery, not just of who I was, but of what I truly needed in a partner. There were still moments, of course, when the past would surface. A familiar scent, a song, a random memory that would float up from the depths. But instead of letting it consume me, I acknowledged it, processed it, and let it go. Anger had completely dissipated, replaced by a quiet wisdom. I learned that forgiveness wasn't about letting Sarah off the hook, but about releasing myself from the burden of resentment. I never regretted selling the house, not once. It had been a radical act, a desperate measure born of profound pain, but it had also been the catalyst for my own liberation. It had forced me to confront the reality of my broken marriage and to take drastic steps to extract myself from it. Without that shock, that decisive action, I might have lingered in denial, stuck in a cycle of hurt and passive aggression. The house sale was the sledgehammer that shattered the illusion of our life together, allowing me to finally see clearly and build anew. I sometimes wondered what Sarah was doing. I heard fragmented whispers through the grapevine, distant connections who knew a bit about her. She'd apparently had a rough time after the divorce. Lost her job, had to move back in with her parents for a while. Mark, the lover, had indeed vanished from her life. She eventually found another job, but her life wasn't the picture of success she might have imagined. No big house, no luxury vacations. Just the hard reality of starting over from nothing. Much like I had, but without the financial cushion or the clear conscience. I didn't gloat about it. I felt no particular satisfaction in her misfortunes. Her fate was her own. My satisfaction came from my own progress, my own healing, my own hard-won peace. One day, almost 2 years after everything happened, I was at a car show, proudly displaying a vintage truck I'd just finished restoring. It was a labor of love, a testament to my new career and my new life. The sun was shining, music was playing, and people were admiring my work. I felt content, truly content. As I walked around, mingling, a familiar voice called my name. Liam, is that really you? I turned. It was an old friend, Dave, who I hadn't seen since before the divorce. He had moved away for work and we'd lost touch. He was standing there smiling, looking genuinely happy to see me. Dave! Wow, it's been ages, I said, extending my hand. We talked for a while, catching up. He asked me about my life, my new business. I told him the abridged version, focusing on the positives. He nodded, listening intently. Then he said, a little hesitantly, so I heard about everything with Sarah and the house. I braced myself, waiting for the judgment, the pity. But he just looked at me, a thoughtful expression on his face. Man, that must have been rough. But you know what? Everyone I've talked to, they say you handled it like a boss. Seriously. To go through something like that, and then rebuild your life like you have. That's something else. His words struck me. For so long, I had viewed my actions as a desperate, vengeful act. But maybe, just maybe, it was also seen as strength, as resilience, as taking back control. It was tough, I admitted, but it was necessary. I had to do what I had to do to survive. And you did more than survive, man, Dave said, patting me on the shoulder. You thrived. Look at this business. Look at you. You seem happy, really happy. I looked around the bustling car show, at the beautiful machines, at the people laughing and enjoying themselves. I looked at the old truck, gleaming under the sun, a symbol of my hard work and passion. And then I looked at Dave, my friend, seeing me for who I was now, not who I used to be. "Yeah," I said, a genuine smile spreading across my face. "Yeah, I am." It wasn't the kind of happiness I'd imagined when I was married, the quiet comfort of a shared life. It was a different kind of happiness, one forged in fire, born from loss but entirely mine. It was the happiness of self-sufficiency, of purpose, of knowing that no matter what life threw at me, I had the strength to stand on my own 2 feet. The revenge, the anger, the pain, it was all part of the story. But it wasn't the ending. The ending was here, in this moment, in this new life. And it was a good one, a really good one. A really good one. The years that followed solidified my new life. My car restoration business grew, requiring me to move into a larger workshop, hire a few employees. It was satisfying work, bringing old, forgotten machines back to their former glory. Each project felt like a metaphor for my own life, taking something broken and making it whole, stronger, more beautiful than before. I continued to build my personal life too. I cultivated deep, meaningful friendships. I traveled, exploring places I'd always wanted to see, but never had the time or courage for. I learned to truly enjoy my own company, finding peace in solitude while also cherishing the connections I made with others. Eventually I met someone. Her name was Emily. She was kind, intelligent, and had a quiet strength about her. I was open with her from the beginning about my past, about Sarah, and the house and the car. She listened patiently, without judgment, and her understanding was a comfort I hadn't realized I needed. She didn't see me as a victim or a vengeful ex-husband, but as a man who had faced immense betrayal and chosen to rebuild himself. Our relationship grew slowly, built on trust and honesty. There were no secrets, no hidden agendas. It was a stark contrast to my previous marriage, and it felt right. Emily brought a quiet joy into my life, a gentle companionship that enriched rather than complicated it. We talked about the future, about a life together, not rushed or desperate, but with a calm confidence that felt entirely new to me. I never forgot the pain of that initial betrayal, but it no longer defined me. It was a chapter in my story, a harsh lesson learned, but not the whole book. I had moved far beyond anger and into a space of genuine peace and content. One evening, Emily and I were out for dinner, celebrating a milestone in my business. We were talking about what defines home. "For me," Emily said, "home isn't a place, it's a feeling. It's where you feel safe, loved, and completely yourself." I thought about the house, the one Sarah had loved, the one I had sold. It had been beautiful, but it hadn't truly been a home for me in the end. It had become a symbol of a broken promise, a painful reminder of deception. "You are right," I said, looking at her across the table, a soft smile on my face. "Home isn't a place, it's definitely a feeling." I thought about my small apartment, now filled with the warmth of my life, my new furniture, my growing collection of books and art. I thought about my workshop, filled with the hum of engines and the smell of grease, where I found purpose and passion. And I thought about Emily, sitting opposite me, her eyes sparkling with understanding. This was home. This was peace. The story of the car and the house had been a dramatic, painful chapter, but it had ended in a way I never could have predicted. It had stripped away everything I thought I wanted, forcing me to discover what I truly needed. It had revealed the depth of betrayal, but also the resilience of the human spirit. I realized that Sarah's actions, however cruel and calculated, had ultimately freed me. They had forced me to confront a stagnant marriage, to leave a complacent job, and to step into a life of authenticity and purpose. Her betrayal inadvertently became my liberation. I raised my glass, meeting Emily's gaze. "To new beginnings," I said. She smiled, clinked her glass against mine. To new beginnings. The past was truly past. The empty driveway, the sold house, the broken vows. They were distant echoes. My present was full, my future bright. And I was driving towards it. Not in a vintage Challenger, but on my own terms, in my own lane. Entirely in control of my journey. And that in itself was the ultimate victory.